the richest girl in America walked down the aisle in tears. Her wedding veil hid her swollen eyes as she married a man she did not love. Outside, crowds cheered, newspapers waited, and society called it a fairy tale. Inside her chest, something broke quietly. This was not a choice. This was the end of a long road that had been decided for her years before she could understand what freedom meant, to understand how she arrived at that altar. You have to go back to the year 1877. You wake up in a mansion on Fifth Avenue in New York City, a house so large it feels more like a palace than a home. The ceiling above your bed rises higher than most people's roofs. Painted angels float across it, frozen in clouds that cost more than entire neighborhoods. The sheets beneath you are made of the finest silk imported from China. The fireplace nearby could roast an entire cow. By every measure, this is a dream. But your body hurts. A steel rod is strapped tightly along your spine, from your neck down to your tailbone. Another bar presses across your forehead. You are 10 years old. This is not punishment. This is training. Your mother believes perfect posture is more important than comfort, more important than childhood, more important than pain. You lie still through the night because you have learned that crying only makes things worse. The servants have a name for your restless movements in the dark. They call them the Vanderbilt fidgets, as if even your suffering must sound elegant. In the morning, a maid quietly unbuckles the metal frame. Only then can you breathe fully again. Relief comes, but it never lasts long. This is the daily life of Consuelo Vanderbilt. She is the daughter of William Kissam Vanderbilt, heir to the Vanderbilt Railroad fortune, one of the richest families in the world. But inside this house, money does not buy kindness. It buys expectations. It buys control. It buys silence. Her mother, Alva Vanderbilt, watches everything, every movement, every word, every flaw. At breakfast, the silverware is so heavy it takes effort to lift it. Consuelo sits straight, shoulders back, chin just so. A wooden ruler snaps lightly against her knuckles when she forgets. Sit up straighter, her mother says. A proper lady never slouches. Alva does not ask her daughter how she feels. She does not ask what she thinks. She has made it clear. That thinking is not Consuelo's job. I do the thinking, her mother once tells her. You do as you're told. And what Alva thinks about, constantly and obsessively, is the future. Not any future. One very specific future. A royal title. A European marriage. A daughter turned into a duchess. Consuelo is sent to special classes with a small group of elite girls from powerful families. They study Latin, French, literature, music, and manners. They read Milton and Virgil while carriages rumble past the windows. They learn how to nod at the right moments and never ask questions of their own. Their voices are trained to sound soft and pleasing. Their movements are measured, controlled, rehearsed. Consuelo learns how to disappear inside herself. She speaks 3 languages fluently. She memorizes history. She writes thoughtful essays, but none of it belongs to her. Everything she learns is meant to polish her, not free her. She is being shaped into something decorative, something valuable, something exchangeable. Her mother reminds her often why this matters. One day, Alva says while adjusting Consuelo's hair too tightly, "You will be a duchess. And when that day comes, you will thank me for every correction, every lesson, every sacrifice." Consuelo says nothing. She has learned that silence is safer. But inside, she has a secret world. While her body is controlled, her mind wanders. Freely, she reads stories of warriors, rebels, and women who survived through courage and will. She admires heroines who resisted, who chose their own paths. At night, alone in her grand bedroom, she whispers small prayers into the dark. Not for wealth, not for status, just for courage. Her younger brother Willie is her only true companion. When they are together, life almost feels normal. They sneak moments of laughter, run across the estate, chase frogs, and once even push their governess into a pond. For a brief moment, they are just children. The punishment is swift. Willie cries. Consuelo does not. There are rare moments of kindness. Her nurse, a woman named Boer, treats her gently. Boer takes her to visit poor families on the estate, including a young girl her own age who is paralyzed and bedridden, with no toys and no future. Sitting beside that child, Consuelo feels something shift inside her. She begins to understand that wealth and happiness are not the same thing, that comfort and freedom are not guaranteed together. At night, she climbs the long staircase back to her room. Gas lamps flicker behind her. Shadows stretch along the walls. The house creaks and sighs like something alive. With every step, she whispers the same quiet prayer. Give me courage. She does not yet know what form that courage will need to take. She only knows that somewhere at the end of this carefully planned path, a fate is waiting for her. And even as a child, she senses that escaping it will cost her everything. This is where her story truly begins. By the time Consuelo turned 17, she had learned how to exist without truly living. Her body had grown tall and elegant, trained by years of correction. Her face had softened into beauty, praised by society. But inside, she felt strangely unfinished, like a story paused in the middle of a sentence. She had been raised to obey, not to choose. And the world rewarded her for it. In the spring of 1894, her mother decided it was time for her to be seen. Consuelo was taken abroad on a grand tour meant to display her like a rare jewel. Egypt, Athens, India. Ancient temples, royal receptions, endless introductions. The family yacht cut through foreign waters while servants arranged her days down to the minute. Everywhere she went, people admired her. No one asked her who she was. She stood on the banks of the Nile and watched women carry water in the heat. She walked through temples older than memory. She saw poverty beside splendor, ceremony beside suffering. For the first time, she felt the size of the world. And for the first time, she understood something unsettling. She had seen more than most women ever would, yet she had touched none of it. Every step was planned. Every word monitored. Even wonder was supervised. Then something unexpected happened. His name was Winthrop Rutherford. He was American, quiet and kind. He did not chase titles. He did not need money. He spoke to her like she was a person, not a prize. When he asked her what books she liked, she was startled. No one had ever asked her that before. She answered carefully, waiting for judgment. None came. They walked together. They talked in corners. They shared books. He listened when she spoke, when she said. The poor children in novels seemed freer than the rich ones. He did not laugh. He thought about it. That alone felt like a miracle for the first time in her life. Consuelo chose something. When Winthrop asked her if she would marry him, she said yes. Quietly, secretly, with a heart full of fear and hope tangled together. She believed that after one hard conversation, after one storm with her mother, she might finally be free. But her mother already knew the change came silently. Letters stopped arriving. Friends disappeared. Servants were dismissed. Conversations ended when she entered rooms. Her father remained distant, unreadable. Her mother said nothing at first, which was worse than anger. Then the performance began. Alva fainted. Doctors were called, curtains were drawn. She refused food. She whispered of heart trouble and shame. She told Consuelo she would die if this marriage went forward, that her daughter's selfishness would kill her. Consuelo believed her. Winthrop's letters never reached her. His name was quietly destroyed in society. He was shut out completely, powerless against the walls of her world, alone and terrified. Consuelo stood at the edge of the one choice she had ever made, and she surrendered. "Tell him I can't," she said softly one evening, her voice already hollow. She never saw him again. Instead, she was told she would marry Charles Spencer Churchill, the Duke of Marlborough. He was older, English, noble, and deeply in debt. His palace, Blenheim, was grand and decaying. What he needed was money. What her mother wanted was a title. What Consuelo wanted no longer mattered. She agreed, not from hope, but from exhaustion. The announcement spread like wildfire. Newspapers called her the richest bride in the world. They measured her waist, described her chin, calculated her fortune. $10 million. A title secured. America traded for England. On the morning of November 6, 1895, New York gathered to watch history. Thousands filled the streets outside St. Thomas Church. Inside, flowers covered every surface. Music played. Guests whispered upstairs. Behind a locked door, Consuelo sat alone in her wedding gown. Her face was swollen from crying. Her corset crushed her ribs. Her veil lay heavy in her lap. She thought of running, of disappearing into the city, of escape, but there was nowhere left to go. When the door finally opened, the veil was lowered. The tears were hidden. Bells rang. She walked forward through arches of flowers, past a world that called this triumph. She spoke the vows. She heard her name change. Applause filled the church. The girl who had once whispered prayers for courage was gone. The Duchess of Marlborough had arrived as the carriage pulled away. Crowds cheering, Consuelo stared out at the city she was leaving behind. Her posture was perfect. Her face was calm. Inside, a single question echoed, quiet and heavy. What is the price of a title? She did not know it yet, but this wedding was not the end of her suffering. It was only the beginning of a much longer fight. There was no honeymoon filled with love or laughter. After the wedding, Consuelo and her new husband stayed briefly at her family estate on Long Island. The house was familiar, but it felt colder than ever. They moved through rooms like strangers. Sharing a stage, they spoke politely. They slept apart. At night, Consuelo lay awake, staring at ceilings she had known since childhood, realizing she no longer belonged anywhere. Soon they crossed the Atlantic, not on a grand liner, but on a cargo ship. The journey was rough. The Duke was ill and withdrawn. Consuelo cared for him quietly, already trained to serve without being seen. When they reached Europe, winter greeted them with gray skies and bitter wind. In Rome, Consuelo's body finally gave in. She collapsed from exhaustion. A doctor told her she might not live a year. She was 18 years old. Strangely, it was not death that frightened her most. It was the idea that her life had never truly begun. The diagnosis was later proven wrong, but the truth behind it remained. She was fading inside a role that did not belong to her. In Paris, her trousseau was completed under her husband's supervision. Heavy gowns, tight jewels, diamonds that bruised her skin. Everything was chosen to impress, nothing to comfort. She learned that her purpose was not to be happy, but to represent a name. Then came Blenheim Palace. The estate rose from the English countryside like a monument to the past. Endless corridors, cold stone, portraits of dead men watching from the walls. It was beautiful, vast, and completely empty of warmth. The servants bowed. The rooms echoed. Consuelo felt smaller than ever. Her husband was distant but polite. He told her plainly that he had married her to save the palace. Love was never mentioned. They lived side by side, never together. In public, she was praised for her grace. In private, she was alone. Slowly, something inside her began to change. She turned outward. She visited villages near the palace. She listened. She saw children freezing in winter and ordered coal delivered without asking permission. She visited hospitals, schools, and shelters. People spoke to her honestly, not because of her title, but because she stayed and listened. Motherhood came, but even that was controlled. Her sons were raised by nurses and rules. She loved them fiercely from a distance. It was not the life she wanted for them. It was the life she had been taught to accept. Years passed, the marriage never softened. Silence grew heavier. Finally, in 1906, it ended quietly. No scandal, no drama, just separation. A portrait removed from a wall. For the first time, Consuelo stood alone by choice. She began hosting gatherings where people spoke freely. Writers, thinkers, reformers, no titles, no seating charts. Just conversation. She worked with women fighting for better lives. She spoke about poverty, health, and dignity. Slowly, her voice grew stronger. She joined political efforts. She walked through slums and spoke in halls of power. She became known not as a decoration, but as someone who worked. The working duchess, they called her. Her mother, once her greatest force of control, changed too. Together, they stood for women's rights. It was not forgiveness, but understanding. And it was enough. Then came war. Consuelo turned her homes into hospitals. She raised money, she organized aid. She helped refugees escape danger. When Europe collapsed again into violence, she fled through mountains with families who had nothing. She crossed oceans not as a bride, but as a protector in America. She began again. She built homes for care, not display. She welcomed wounded soldiers, refugee children, anyone in need. For the first time, her wealth served her values, not her cage. She found love again, this time freely. Jacques Balsan asked her a simple question that changed everything. What would you like to do? No one had ever asked her that before. She chose work. She chose service. She chose peace. In her later years, she wrote her story, not to accuse, but to understand. When her memoir was published, women around the world saw themselves in her words. A life that began in a golden cage had become a path toward freedom. When Consuelo Vanderbilt died, there were no crowns or ceremonies. She was buried simply beside her son, not as a duchess, not as an heiress, just as herself. Her life proved something quiet but powerful. The most beautiful cages are still cages. And even after a lifetime inside one, it is never too late to learn how to fly.